Hey, true believers, welcome to the Art of the Trailer, our series on the business of filmmaking. Today's category, the live event. At Comic-Con 2017, across the street from the San Diego Convention Center, on the side of the Tick Takeover, if you peeked around the bushes, around the corner, you'd see the Blade Runner Experience, and it was a massive exhibit. 12,000 square feet, which I think was the biggest off-site space at the con, at least for an enclosure. But that wasn't the only thing that was big. I started walking towards the exhibit, and all these people I'm passing on the right are actually in line, which you can see snaked hundreds of feet from the actual exhibit. And once you get to the exhibit, under those umbrellas, it's packed with people in a maze of rope lines. I heard the line got at least as long as 4 hours, or 2 hours if you're okay with skipping the virtual reality part of the exhibit. But when I arrived for my appointment, I was escorted past the line to the VIP waiting section. That's how I roll. Just kidding, that doesn't always happen. They led me to this roped-off little holding pen in the middle of everyone else and just told me to wait. It's kind of awkward standing there, so I decided to get this panning shot of the crowd, and when I was done, I put my camera down, and a weird thing happened. My eyes were just adjusting from the camera to reality, and suddenly I see this security guy coming right for me. He's already like 3 or 4 feet away, just slowly coming at me, and he looks serious as shit. My heart just sank. I was like, whoa, am I not allowed to film here? So I started to panic a little because, they can kick you out for anything. Suddenly he just turns and he walked away and he was gone. I'm just standing there frozen, clutching my camera going, what the fuck was that? The guy was like 12 inches from my face. I looked over to one of the other staffers, this guy, and he was just kind of looking at the ground laughing. I almost asked him what the hell that was all about, and then suddenly they were rushing me off into the entrance, perhaps sensing I was considering filing a complaint. As you enter, there's a burst of fog, and it seems to be pitch black inside, so you're a little disoriented. You find yourself in this long, dark corridor, and along the walls are these backlit pieces of art with scribbles on them. So I just started recording footage as we were waiting for the staffers to tell us what to do next. I didn't know how long we were going to be there, so I just shot as many as I could. Later on, one of the staffers told us that the bottom pictures were concept art for film locations, and the top pictures were film versions of those locations. That enraged me, because had I known, I'd have gotten more comparison shots between the upper and lower images, but I shrugged off this affront to my sense of journalistic excellence and carried on, because soon they ushered us into a new room filled with the staff cheering us on. I know it's kind of cheesy, but it works. It gets your energy up. They rushed us to our seats, and we were instructed to put on our virtual reality gear. I figured since I couldn't film inside the VR headset, I'd just keep my camera rolling, aiming blindly. I had my VR headset on just like everyone else, so I couldn't see what I was pointing at, but I managed to get some footage of the others during the experience. And after Comic-Con, when I was making this video, I found the trailer for the VR game online. I guess it's already out, so I can show you some footage from that after all. When it starts, you're in the cockpit of a spinner, and the spinner starts taking you through the city. You don't control it, you're just along for the ride, like a rail shooter. And suddenly your heads-up display alerts you to a nearby replicant. Your onboard computer starts scanning all the nearby spinners. After you scan a few, you find a replicant, and you engage on a super Hollywood chase throughout the city. Eventually, the replicant starts smashing into you. Now, the seats we were sitting in were D-box seats, like in the movie theaters, that rumble and shift, and you could really feel it, especially in the latter stages of the chase sequence when it was banking turns and when that car was, or the spinner was crashing into your spinner, etc. Finally, your car starts crashing back into the replicant, and you finally smash him out of the sky, and you both go crashing to the ground. Then it fades to black, and you take your VR headset off. But suddenly we find the wall in front of us is gone, and on the other side is the crash spinner that we just witnessed. A total crime scene taped off and everything. I realized later when I watched my footage that night, dumping it to my computer, that the wall was raised a couple minutes before the VR animation concluded, but I didn't hear a thing, even though my headphones had pretty low volume. Good stagecraft, I'd have to say. So, you get out of your seat and you step out of that room into another, into this crime scene. And, geez, I have to say, the full-size replica spinner was very cool. Incredible detail. and there were several cyberpunk street urchins milling about the crime scene, like that girl with the umbrella. So I was trying to get this long shot circling around the spinner, but I was having a problem with my camera. I burned a couple minutes in the attempt, and it just wasn't working. So with my free hand, I pulled out my phone so I could at least get a few pics. Suddenly, the cop starts yelling at me, "Get out of my crime scene!" I'm like, shit, I'm just trying to get another picture. So they let me take one more picture, and of course, they had to mug for it and incidentally blocked the view of the spinner. The guy yelled pretty loud, and most of the others had already gone to the next section, so I kind of turned tail and got out of there, and I stumbled into the next room, and suddenly I was doused with a brief splash of water. I looked up above, and there were these rain droplets coming down, and I thought, they even brought the Blade Runner rain into this. Holding my cell phone in one hand and my already falling apart camera in the other, I briefly worried about the water damage, but then I looked up to see what looked like a fully recreated city block of Los Angeles from the Blade Runner movie. I was honestly a little taken aback at the size and scale. On the right, you had the noodle shop, just like the one Deckard eats at. You almost felt like Gaff could walk up behind you at any minute and order you back to the precinct.
Are you guys hungry?
Yeah. The noodle shop was staffed by a cook, and while I saw some people throughout the city block eating noodles, he explained we couldn't get it from him in a theatrical presentation that included at least one bad joke that somehow still manages to be a crowd pleaser.
Are you guys ready? You guys want some?
Yeah.
I do too. Who brought it?
Knowing I was to get no repast at the Noodle House, I struck out further into the Blade Runner world. As you've noticed, the place was littered with actors playing trashy cyberpunk characters to complete the ambiance. And they really made it feel like a scummy section of the city. Some looked hostile, some looked like lost souls, but several were sexually aggressive. I'd noticed a couple of these really small replica cars, and I figured I should get some footage, and as I panned into the car, I was shocked to catch these two in flagrante delicto, or at least what would have been had it been real life. You can actually see the guy kind of say, "Oh no," as I turned the camera on him. Hope his wife's not watching. I awkwardly moved on, but prurient interests forced me to circle to the other side for a reverse shot. I mean, look at that leg. I know it's an act, but it looks like they're up to no good. In a good way. Now this good-looking guy, the bald one without a shirt, oh, he's quite a firecracker. That guy was all over me. He came up to me, all come hither and such, and he put his hands on me and then my camera, and he said, "Ooh, you've got a big camera," like it was much bigger than the other ones of, the attendees that had been through, and all I could think of was, joke's on him, it's only big because it's really old tech. And this lady, she may have the good looks of a futuristic meth head Anne Hathaway, but don't let that fool you. It did fool this guy, however, when he accidentally knocked over her umbrella. He put it back right away, but one gaze at him, and all he could do was giggle, and he was forced to retreat. I saw my opening, and I went in. And that's when meth head Anne Hathaway got hostile, sexually hostile.
Sit down, they're on a date. They need to make out.
Is there a chair right here?
Did you hear the cook ask me if there was an extra chair where I was standing? I said no, just the one she left. And he still went over and said something to those two actors, and they promptly came over and claimed the belligerent actress's seat. She wouldn't be back at the noodle shop.
Excuse me, right behind you. Come on over here. This nice young lady was nice enough to give you a chair.
After I'd had enough of homophobic meth head Anne Hathaway, I walked over towards a couple of lines that had formed. I walked up to this kid and asked him what it was about, and he said it was a replicant test. How does it work, do you know?
Scan your eye, and if you're a replicant, they arrest you. Let's see if I'm a replicant.
What the hell? I rushed to the front of the line to check, and yes, they had Voight-Kampff tests. Oh, I had to do that. So you walk up to the display screen, apparently the future has finally invented iPads, and you see yourself on the screen, and you have to position yourself within this silhouette, and there are actually some eyes outlined in the silhouette for your eyes to line up to, and that stuck out for me as the eyes play such a prominent role in the Voight-Kampff test from the first Blade Runner film. But based on the test subjects I saw, I'd say only a third of them actually had their eyes lined up. Probably didn't matter. The scanning sequence was probably preset or random. It didn't seem to actually obviously be scanning you, but after they lined up in the silhouette, a laser from the wall would go over you, scan over you, and they made an attempt to at least make it look functional, so I give them that. It actually was fairly cool looking. So after a few seconds when it scans you, it's presumably analyzing the data, and then it gives you a readout, either human or replicant, and there's a replicant security guy right there to like arrest you if you're not human. When I was there, he was just messing with people by like making them do squats or jumping jacks or whatever. But my buddy says that when he was there, they actually cuffed you and sometimes pushed you up against the wall and made it look like they were going to take you away or something, so that sounded a lot cooler. And hey, wait a second. I know that guy. That guy right there. He's from the front of the building. He was the security guy at the front of the building that was harassing me. That guy was an actor the whole time. This is just layer within layer. This is totally a Blade Runner experience. Well played, asshole security guy. Well played. So I got myself scanned. I was a human, nothing big there. So grabbed my stuff and looked around for other things to check out. Right next to the scanner thing, they had a display case with props, guns, and all kinds of future tech that looked really cool. So checked that out for a few minutes and then headed down to the end of the block. I was pretty much at the end. All that was left was BB's Bar. You can see that building facade. It was just a facade. On the right, there were some costumes from the movies. That's always going to be a standby from any type of movie tie-in exhibit at Comic-Con. They're always going to have the costumes on display. It's the cheapest thing they can do. But if you actually wanted to go into BB's Bar, you had to take a left, and you go into the final room of the exhibit. On the right was a basically roped-off bar with Johnny Walker's staff serving tasters of scotch. And then there's an aisle to the exit right down the center. And if you go to the left, you can finally partake of the Blade Runner noodles that you'd seen out on the city block. Apparently people had come out to the final room, gotten their noodles, and then gone back into the city block. So I got in line. There's no silverware, just chopsticks. So you ate your noodles just like Deckard. And actually, they were pretty good. About halfway through mine, I even realized there were small bits of chicken, about the size of a half or a quarter of an M&M. So, after stealing an undeserved second helping, I took my leave. Overall, I thought it was a fantastic exhibit. You have to realize these are temporary exhibits set up in a day or two and only meant to last a few days. I remember the last time Harrison Ford popped up in one of these. It was for Ender's Game, Comic-Con 2013. It was a big letdown, basically just a walking tour of several of the film's sets. A couple of them were pretty cool, like the space station and Earth's orbit, but some were pretty boring, like the barracks, just very plain. And one was the main character's living room. I mean, that was really dumb. The only standout of the exhibit was a photo op in the space station set where you can look out through a porthole at the sun coming up over the Earth. Now that was pretty cool. I took a ton of pics of that, but overall, the exhibit was pretty lame, though I guess some would say that made it match the film pretty well. So with that in mind, I'd have to say the Blade Runner experience was a home run. If it had just been that city block and the spinner, I'd have thought it was decent, certainly better than Ender's Game. I hope this gives you a good feel for what the exhibit was like. I know it's a bit long, but I wanted to show you every step of the process so you could really experience every moment of the experience. I really wish more people had a chance to see the exhibit, and some that did had to wait up to 4 hours for it, and they said that dampened their enthusiasm for it. But like I said, you have to set your expectations. Since most of you couldn't come to Comic-Con to see the Blade Runner 2049 experience, I want to do something to help one of you get a personal connection to the con. See you next time, folks.